This may seem an unusual title for a sermon, Cosmic Optimism. And it is. And one of the reasons I chose the front cover of today's bulletin, it's a picture from outer space, probably from the space station, taken of the Nile River, showing the Sinai and also showing Israel. So we're talking a cosmic view of optimism, and we have the earthly example from Shirley Temple, but then we also have the cosmic optimism, which is talking of the larger cosmos. As we watch the nightly news and read our daily newspapers, I know that many of you are sickened by the violence we see reflected in our world. The modus operandi of the media apparently is, if it bleeds, it leads. Some newscasters do sometimes throw in a warm, happy moment at the end of their broadcasts, but this does little to improve our emotional responses to the constant barrage of negative nightly news. As I process these media segments and the emotions that they evoke, I ask, as I'm sure you do, is how do we remain personally optimistic in the face of the death and destruction that we constantly see before us? To begin to address this relevant question, I asked Dr. Sumas to play as his prelude, Soon and Very Soon, with its positive message of hope that we will shortly see the Lord. This is positive to me at many levels. First of all, as I age and see my remaining hair growing increasingly white, I know that it is only a short matter of time before I too begin my final journey. I always enjoyed this picture because it's us lining up at the end to go to heaven. And it's also positive in nature because it's not going down, it's going up. This past summer, my twin brother died of cancer, so my feelings of mortality grow stronger by the day. Losing so many close friends in this church in recent months shows that natural death may be just around the corner for many of us in this congregation. While this is a natural fact of life, it is still painful to those we care about, to lose those we care about, regardless of the recognition that this was their appointed time. I chose the hymn for this service, O God, Our Help in Ages Past, as it summarizes in its first verse our entire life journey and the importance of a relationship with the Almighty who is with us in this life and the next. Remember, O God, our help in ages past, our hope for years to come, our shelter from the stormy blast, and our eternal home. I think that verse summarizes human existence, and I find much encouragement in it. I chose as the closing hymn, My Hope is Built on Christ Alone, as this depicts a life of faith as the rock and foundation of our lives. As a person who's been involved in building many structures, I know the importance of a good foundation. Having witnessed the subsidence of the Windsor Park subdivision in North Las Vegas, I know that we do not want to build upon sand, but on the firm foundation of Christ's promises for our lives. My fundamental question is, are you primarily an optimist, a realist, or a pessimist in your world outlook? Speaking for myself, I have to say honestly that I am all three at times, but at my core, I am a Christian cosmic optimist. Being an optimist is part of many people's DNA. Think about it for a minute. Many people are in careers which are essentially optimistic in nature, as they look and work towards obtaining a positive outcome in their daily work lives in hopes of creating a better personal life and world for themselves, their families, and for others. For example, fishermen go fishing because they have a reasonable expectation that they will catch some fish. Ministers preach because they want to help people and share the love of Jesus. Historically, the early gold miners hoped to strike it rich by hitting the mother lode. Gamblers on the strip hoped to win big on the tables or on the slots. Inventors want to develop new products to help mankind. Farmers till the soil, plant the seeds, water and weed the plants, and hope to attain a wonderful harvest to feed the world. Fundamentally, optimism is based on having faith and a larger hope for a better world. The Pilgrims left Europe because they wanted to practice their faith in freedom. They suffered immensely in that first year, as many died of disease as they started their new colony in Plymouth, Massachusetts, which is located on Cape Cod Bay. How many of you ever been to Cape Cod, by show of hands? Okay, there's a goodly number, but some of you haven't. So let me give you a short thing here. This is a map of Cape Cod, which is on the peninsula off of Massachusetts. And everybody who's been to Cape Cod always refers to an arm. Okay, you see it's an arm shape. Up near the top is Provincetown, and that is the harbor, this harbor right here, where the Mayflower stopped first on its journey from England. It was in this harbor that they did the Mayflower Compact, which was the first agreement or legal document that they signed talking about how they were going to interrelate as a group in their new colony. The soils of Cape Cod were developed by a glacial moraine, which is like a conveyor belt from the big ice age. So it's right at the base, but there's a lot of sandy soils that were moved by ocean and by the tides. So a lot of the soil on Cape Cod proper is not very good. I love this picture, which was taken at the Federated Church in East Orleans, Massachusetts. It's a painting of the Pilgrims finally doing their laundry. Think about that for a minute. They were on a ship for over 60 days, and you imagine how much seasickness there was and lice on these ships. And so this was their opportunity finally to do their laundry. You know, the simple things that everyone does, but if you hadn't done it for 60 days or more, you were due. You were pretty rank, in other words. Okay, this is the Pilgrim Monument that was built on at Provincetown to commemorate the Pilgrims and their first stoppage at Provincetown. This is the Plymouth Plantation, which is in Plymouth, and this was a reenactment site of where the Pilgrims started. Now, a couple things that are interesting about the Pilgrims that many of you may not be aware of is when they were doing their exploration of Cape Cod to try and figure out where they wanted to set up their new colony, they came across an Indian burial ground and they found some corn, and that is known as Corn Hill, and they stole the Indians' corn that was buried there. They used that corn in their first crop in Plymouth when they started and that was their first harvest. It was from stolen Indian corn. Now, subsequently, they paid back the Indians for that corn, but it was originally stolen corn, which was good for them because it was corn that would grow in Massachusetts. If you had had stuff from England, it might not work in Massachusetts. So that corn was helpful. The place where they established the Plymouth Plantation was actually a former Indian village that had been ravaged by smallpox. See, the Indians had interface with the white man coming in from ships where they'd be training with them and trading with them, and in turn they caught the diseases from the white man. And that killed the Indians at this particular village, which then they had already previously cleared the land, which then the Pilgrims came in and started their habitations. So that is important. And this is another view of the Plymouth Plantation looking out towards Cape Cod Bay. And this is what I think is a total joke. It's Plymouth Rock. This is, you've all heard about Plymouth Rock, and it's like a nothing rock, and it's engraved 1620 on it, which is the time of the initial development of the Pilgrims. At the most fundamental level, the first Thanksgiving was more than a simple harvest festival. It was instead a special moment to stop and thank God for their very survival and express their tangible hope for a better future. I know that I am glad that Priscilla and John Alden, two of the Pilgrims who actually did survive, as had they not, I would not be here today speaking to you, as my family are direct descendants. This is probably one of the reasons why Thanksgiving is my personal favorite holiday, as I love to be around family and friends, eat pumpkin pie, and consume juicy turkey with cranberry sauce and gravy, and to thank God for his many blessings. When reviewing the nightly news, however, I can truly understand how one can be pessimistic about current events. Our newspapers and television news are filled with reports of people filled with personal hatred and fear towards one another, engaging in senseless acts of violence with the killing and bloodshed appearing nightly on those programs. To me, this is clear evidence that many people apparently live out their lives without hope, lacking the love of God or even simple human empathy in their hearts. This shows why the world so desperately needs to hear the good news about the love of Jesus and the possibility of a different kind of life. As each new military conflict erupts, mankind waits and wonders whether we are headed to a nuclear showdown, which clearly no one will win, and whether we will finally see this time mankind disappear in a burst of fire, radioactive dust, and collective destruction. I do not know about you, but I always get a little anxious every time Israel gets into a war, as I cannot wonder, in light of all the famine, sickness, and earthly natural disturbances that we see reflected in the nightly news, whether we may be finally entering the last days. Time will tell on this outcome, but my hope rests in and on God. Mankind certainly has had the plague of war ever before us. This could be just another moment of madness. And I show an example up here about Walter Cronkite, who for many of my generation will know was a very influential news anchor, and his comments about war. After so many years, it seems an awful shame to me that mankind still cannot find a way to peaceably resolve conflict, except by engaging in one more senseless war, one right after another, almost as in some worldwide whack-a-mole game of violence and destruction. Born at the end of the Korean War, it appears throughout my life that war is either currently underway, on the horizon, or feared in the immediate future. To me, most wars are simply madness, with young men and now also women killing others they do not even know. Over time, mankind has found even more innovative and deadly ways to send their fellow man to the hereafter. Instead of a rock or a club, as in the days of old, it is now possible to kill one another from thousands of miles away using drone and long-range missiles, where the aggressors cannot even see the enemy die except by some satellite video feed, which records the flash of a distant explosion. In our high-tech world, killing has thus become an even more impersonal and deadly. Sometimes I wonder if we are all growing numb to this death and destruction. As a Christian and as a human being, I deeply feel the pain of the loss of life from this senseless killing and collateral destruction. As a person who has also been engaged in community development for my entire career, I am also saddened to see the destruction of homes, businesses, and capital infrastructure, knowing that it will take years to replace all the destroyed, damaged buildings. War is an evil activity that mankind somehow cannot seem to avoid. I find all this destruction senseless, especially when mankind already has enough work on its plate to eliminate human poverty already present in our midst, much less replace good housing that previously existed before these military conflicts, while at the same time responding to all our various other natural disasters that besets mankind. I remember once asking a former county manager if, after reading dozens of my memorandums over the years, whether she thought that I was the most cynical person she knew. Her response was quite to the contrary, as she said that my memos were not cynical, but actually right on the mark of the ways things actually were. As a young person, I used to rib my mother about her sunny, optimistic perspective in life. To me, she reflected the epitome of a person who took St. Paul's dictate to look on the positive side of life, and she lived her life accordingly. She and my father were saintly and God-loving people. In fact, I used to tell my mother that she had to be somewhat mentally ill to see things so positively when, to me, it seemed like the world was going to hell in a handbasket, and that it had apparently not learned much from the madness of World War II, and still seemed ever preoccupied with violence and civil distress at home, and with some new proxy war being fought in some distant part of the world. As a teenager, I also read a great deal about concentration camps and the industrial killing of Jews, homosexuals, gypsies, and political prisoners, and others who had been deemed less than human per the evil Nazi Aryan ideology. I also studied our own evil history with slavery and cannot see much difference between it and the concentration camps, with the exception that the Jews were subject to the Nazi domination for 12 years, whereas our own experience with slavery lasted from 1619 to 1865 and beyond through the Jim Crow era, and even much longer multi-generational time frame. Interestingly enough, both of these periods of evil ended only after the tremendous bloodshed of the Civil War and World War II, as though God wanted vengeance upon the nation, injuring all in some ways who had somehow benefited by these evil acts. President Abraham Lincoln himself proposed such a concept in his second inaugural speech. I am thus saddened today when I hear many others continue to express similar sentiments of hatred and intolerance towards others. I shake my head in sadness and disgust and hear the 1960s folk tune by John, Paul, and Mary entitled Blowing the Wind, and the echo of their refrain, "Oh, when will they ever learn? When will they learn?" If what I say resonates with you, I suspect you may wonder, like I do, how we can see the hand of God in this constant conflict. From the larger Christian perspective, or should I say from the 50,000 feet in outer space, I am comforted by the realization that history is fundamentally His story. Again, this is the picture on your bulletin, and for those who are geographically challenged, it is a picture of the Nile River, the Sinai, and as you go around the curve is Israel. And Israel always seems to be in the center of history, as it is the connection between Africa, Asia Minor, and then the pathway to Europe. Again, history. The Bible paints a picture in Genesis that in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God. In Revelations, we learn that God will be returning to bring peace at last to the world and to His creation. In the Easter story, we learn that Jesus has conquered death and that He will greet us as we too, in our own appointed time, pass through the veil of our earthly existence and transition into God's spiritual kingdom. I am reminded that during World War II, General Douglas MacArthur's Public Relations Office frequently referred to the closing out of a battle sequence as a mopping up operation. While I find this term somewhat offensive to those soldiers who were still losing their lives and still being injured in combat, one could argue that since the cosmic Eastern victory 2,000 years ago, that mankind has been presently engaged in a mopping up operation, and that we, as believing Christians, and those engaged in serving God and our fellow man, that it is only a matter of time as we wait for the final banquet and victory celebration promised in the final book of Revelations. As a Christian, therefore, I have a cosmic optimism and faith belief that God has already won the battle, and that through Easter we will see His glory once we die, or even sooner, should He return in our lifetime as prophesied in Revelations. Life may still be hard for many, with a ready acknowledgement that we still have the presence of evil in our midst. But for people of faith, we have the real hope that God is still at work in history, and eventually all this madness will cease, and that lasting peace will be restored, and a new harmony will exist throughout all of creation. I believe that St. Paul said that if our Christian faith is truly foolishness, then we are to be the most pitied among men. Apostle Paul also said, however, that if our Christian faith is true and real, that we are clearly on the right path, and that we should joyously share the good news with our brothers and sisters, so that they may also come to know the Lord and also have abundant lives. While I continue to be appalled and sickened by what I see on the nightly news, I am still optimistic that Christ is alive and that his earthly and heavenly angels are at work in this world and universe, and that we are working out on the right side of history can still make a positive difference in the lives of others. I, along with you, have seen the daily goodness of God in this world and in nature, and along with millions of other people, have hopefully contributed in a modest way to bringing the light and hope to others. My brothers and sisters, let us get down to brass tacks. If we truly believe that the Christian faith and life is the essence and foundation of our lives, then we should not be lukewarm Christians, but rather, like a committed gambler, need to go all in and place our chips on what we believe is the winning hand, which is that Jesus Christ is the Lord, and that he will come in final victory to judge the living and dead and bring the world to peace and justice. In the words of Revelations, I too say, "Come, Lord Jesus," as clearly mankind continues to muck it up while we continue to remain in charge of your wonderful creation. Clearly, we need the Lord's power, love, and mercy to set things right. We are anxiously awaiting for Christ's return and hope that this will come soon. But before I close, I want to also say that I look forward to the day when the Lord can explain to me and to mankind at large why it has taken so long. The world is growing impatient in the delay, and frankly, I cannot see how prolonging the suffering of mankind and seeing this lovely world continue to deteriorate benefits anyone or anything. Once again, I say, come, Lord Jesus. Amen.